So, hi everyone. Lovely to have you here with me today. Today I'm looking at addressing pollution on a very basic level. What do I mean by that? First of all, what is pollution anyway? Well, pollution is really anything that is toxic or damaging. Now, if we look up the word pollution, we'll see it says it is harmful to the environment. But what these definitions, or people who are writing these definitions, fail to realize is that we are part of the environment. We're very much part of the environment. And they need to start, in my opinion, differentiating between the outer environment and the inner environment. We keep forgetting that we're part of nature and that anything we do in our own lives affects the outer environment. So what I am postulating here today is that our inner environments are toxic. That's where all the pollution comes from. Yes, it comes from smokestacks. It comes from radioactive materials. It comes from gases. And it comes from us throwing out things like our cell phones. It comes from us throwing out paper that is not recyclable. Yes, it comes from all of this, but that's only the secondary source. The primary source is us. We are polluted beings, most of us. And the pollution begins with our thoughts, with our language, with our belief systems, because pollution means toxicity. And how do I know we're polluted? Because most of our thoughts are not our own, and we don't have many authentic thoughts. Very few thoughts are authentically ours or our original thoughts. So we've become polluted in our minds, in our belief systems, in our brain cells, in our bodies. We wear toxic clothing. We sleep on toxic sheets and beddings. We wash ourselves with toxic substances. We wipe ourselves with toxic towels. We don't even pay attention to what they're made of or how they're made. You see, a lot of people think, oh, if it's organic cotton, then it's fine. But if the workers were treated in a very toxic manner, in a harmful manner, then you're also purchasing and using that toxic energy. We tend to forget about the people who make these things and how they're treated, about how the workers are and their well-being. And we forget that toxicity happens on a very basic level. The thoughts that we think, the music that we listen to, the words that we hear, the fact that there's so much internal chatter going on in our heads. That's one of the most polluted places on earth, is in our heads, because there's so much internal chatter, and most of that chatter is not even our own. It's not even authentically in our own. It's chatter that we have inherited. So what to do about all this? Well, first become mindful of it. Until we're conscious beings, we're not able to make changes and transform anything. Before a change has to occur, we have to transform ourselves first and transform the things we do not like internally. It has to begin with each of us. And many people say, oh, I'm just one person. I've heard this all the time. I'm just one person. I can't make a difference. I'm just a little splash. No, it's each individual doing this that eventually becomes a critical mass that leads to change. That's how change happens with each of us. It has to happen with us individually. So how can you change the toxicity of your mind? How can you change all these toxic chatter and thoughts that are happening in your head, which are not even yours? By paying attention to them, by being still enough, by being quiet enough. We live in a very noisy universe, you know. One of the greatest, for me, forms of pollution is noise pollution. So I used to go every year, twice a year, on a silent retreat. And it's only sitting by the lake. There's a place lakeside in Quebec, just outside of Montreal, in Canada, that I used to go to. And sitting by the lake, I would become so aware of how noisy the birds were, and even the water in the lake when it wasn't quite still. because everything else was so quiet there, I began to realize just how noisy a lake could be, how noisy the forest was, how noisy the trees were. And there was another place that I would go to as well for the silent retreats, which was up in very northern California, and it was on a hill. And when I went there, I used to go there in Novembers, and I remember how the turkeys would come around and how noisy they were. And I remember thinking, of course they're noisy because they're about to be killed. It's November in the United States. And this is the saddest part of the year for them. And so I really would like each and every person to think about how much noise and chatter that each and every one of us really create in our lives, and how being silent can help with that. Do we really have to talk so much? Do I need to talk right now? And we need to think about all of this, because as you're listening to this and as I'm speaking to this right now, there are babies screaming because they're being born. The mothers giving birth to them are screaming through labor. There are people being thrown downstairs. There are car accidents happening, these big bangs of car accidents, and the wheels are screeching to a halt. There are monks chanting. There are people dancing to music. There's music being made, lots of noise there too. And there are people who are laughing. So there's always a lot of noise in the world. There's always a lot of noise. How can we create more inner peace? By creating less inner noise, internal chatter. So once we start working on that, I find that we begin to pay attention to all the forms of pollution. So to say that, as most environmental groups say, that the environment is toxic, no, it's the inner environment we need to look at. We cannot change the outer environment until we change the source from which it came, which is our own inner environment. So we need to detoxify our bodies. We need to detoxify the lymph, the cells, the kidneys, the adrenals, all the organs of our bodies need to be detoxed. The brain cells need to be detoxed. We need to start living lives of abundance, where we no longer keep buying things and accumulating, but that we find abundance in the leaf of a tree. Abundance in listening to a bird sing. That's the music of our lives. That we find abundance in being quiet and being still within ourselves. Once we begin to realize just how abundant life is, we will not constantly be creating more and more stuff in our lives, and therefore the chatter will also not support it. So I invite you all to think about how much you pollute your own life today, and how much all of us are responsible for the pollution all over, on all forms of pollution. Whether it's the seas, the oceans, the lakes, the waters, whether it's the soil, whether it's on a deeper level, such as being unpeaceful, the lack of peace by the internal chatter that we give a lot of attention to when we start listening to mainstream media. Shut off mainstream media. That's the seat, to me, of all pollution in the world, is mainstream media, because it begins with us. And all these polluted thoughts that we think are ours are not. We've inherited these thoughts. We've inherited all of these unbelievably toxic thoughts. They were given to us by our family, or through songs, or through plays and movies and mainstream media, because that's what we listen to and that's what we become. And not only that, but most of us have never had an original thought. It's all been inherited, most of our thoughts. So think about how to make your life more authentic and more original, and how much less you can pollute your own life. And we'll all benefit, because it starts with each of us. If each of us creates this kind of transformation, then eventually it would lead to a critical mass. And that's how change occurs, when there's a critical mass being formed. So please join me in this, won't you? And please click the subscribe button and the notification button here, and join me every weekday, Monday to Friday at this time, same platform. And please add your comments below. I look forward to seeing them, reading them, and responding. Thanks, everyone. Let's do this together.